6:15, this is Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. The news edited by Catherine Pereira and read by Lavani Vijayatunga. First, we take a look at the headlines. President Ranil Wickremesinghe has emphasized that the officials should implement the advice given to them for the country's development properly. The World Rugby Council lifts the ban imposed on Sri Lanka rugby. Several medium and large-sized tanks in the Anuradhapura district are overflowing due to the prevailing heavy rains. It has been noted that Sri Lanka has achieved a remarkable growth in covering its loans amidst the challenges. The two government fertilizer companies have agreed to provide fertilizer needed for tea cultivation. In news overseas, US says up to 400,000 remain in North Gaza as ground offensive goes on. Those are the headlines, and now let's move on to the details of the local news. President Ranil Wickremesinghe has emphasized that the officials should implement the advice given to them regarding the country's development properly. State officials have the extensive knowledge on their subject areas. He made these remarks at a district coordinating committee meeting held in Nuwara Eliya today. No room will be allowed to take the country to setback. He also mentioned about the program to develop Nuwara Eliya district as a tourist attraction. The World Rugby Council has lifted the ban imposed on Sri Lanka rugby, the Ministry of Sports announced. This was communicated to the Sports Minister Rohan Ranasinghe by the Asia Rugby President Qais Al-Dalai during a meeting held in Dubai. Our provincial correspondents say that several medium and large-sized tanks in the Anuradhapura district are overflowing due to the prevailing heavy rains. The engineers say that if the rain continues, the sluice gates of Rajangane Reservoir will be open. Many paddy lands have also been inundated. This is the news from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. And we continue with more local news. State Minister of Finance Shehan Semasinghe says that Sri Lanka has achieved a remarkable growth in covering its loans amidst the challenges when compared to other countries. The country is dedicated to fulfill the objectives of sustainable development of the country. He made these remarks while participating at the fourth session of All-Party Economic Summit of the UN on Poverty Eradication and Development. The summit, which commenced yesterday, will continue until tomorrow. He further said that after completing the debt restructuring program, opportunities will be given for investments under concessionary financial management. It is also hoped to obtain the contribution of the private sector for the development activities in the country. The two fertilizer companies of the government have agreed to provide fertilizer needed for tea cultivation at a production price. Lanka Fertilizer Company and the Commercial Fertilizer Company are producing mixed fertilizer for cultivation of tea, cinnamon, coconut and other plantation crops. The Independent Association of Tea Industrialists had requested Minister Mahida Amaraveera to provide these fertilizer at a concessionary price. And to conclude the local news, the headlines once again. President Ranil Wickremesinghe has emphasized that the officials should implement the advice given to them for the country's development properly. The World Rugby Council lifts the ban imposed on Sri Lanka rugby. Several medium and large-sized tanks in the Anuradhapura district are overflowing due to the prevailing heavy rains. It has been noted that Sri Lanka has achieved a remarkable growth in covering its loan amidst the challenges. Two government fertilizer companies have agreed to provide fertilizer needed for the tea cultivation. And that was the local news.
The main news story is brought to you by Sinhala Mahatmya.
The main news story for this evening, Litrogas Lanka has increased the prices of its domestic LP gas cylinders with effect from midnight today. The revised price are as follows. A 12.5 kilogram cylinder will be at 3,565 rupees, an increase of 95 rupees. A 5 kilogram cylinder would be at 1,431 rupees, an increase of 38 rupees. A 2.3 kilogram cylinder will be sold at 668 rupees, that's an increase of 18 rupees. And that was the main news story.
The main news story was brought to you by Sinhala Mahatmya.
In Washington this evening, at least 5 sluice gates of the Udawalawa Reservoir have been opened due to the heavy rains in the area. Furthermore, 5 spill gates of Dedroya Reservoir have also been opened. The Department of Irrigation said people living in the low-lying areas must remain vigilant as water levels of the Walave and Dedroya are rising rapidly. That came to you in Watchlight, and now let's move on to the headlines of the world news. US says up to 400,000 remain in North Gaza as ground offensive goes on. Nepal earthquake, more than 150 killed in remote western Nepal. King Charles's visit to Kenya unearths memories of unresolved injustices. Those are the headlines, and now let's move on to the details of the world news. Some 300,000 to 400,000 people remain in northern Gaza, US envoy David Satterfield has said. Israel is focusing its offensive in this part of the enclave and has urged civilians in the area to move to the south. The Israeli military is also carrying out strikes in the south, and the UN says no part of Gaza is safe. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is meeting leaders from Lebanon, Qatar and Jordan in Amman as he pushes for humanitarian pauses in the fighting. But Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said yesterday there will be no temporary ceasefire with Hamas in Gaza until all Israeli hostages are released. More than 150 people have been killed after an earthquake struck remote western Nepal yesterday. Security forces have been deployed to help rescue efforts in the rugged cities of Jajakot and Rakum, 500 kilometers west of Kathmandu. Strong tremors were felt far away in the Nepalese capital and in the cities in the neighboring India, including Delhi. An army spokesman said that more than 100 people have been injured. Jajakot's capital hospitals is packed with wounded. A 5-day visit to Kenya by Britain's King Charles III is unearthing memories of atrocities committed during the 6-decade colonization of the East African country. As King Charles landed in Nairobi on Tuesday for his first state visit to Africa since becoming king after Queen Elizabeth II's death last year, some Kenyans were waiting for him to formally apologize for the acts of violence as King Charles described them. But the monarch stopped short of doing so. The monarch was accompanied by Queen Camilla. And that was the world news.
Development news.
A new program will be implemented in the Kandy town to control the flood situation due to heavy rain. Assistant Director of Kandy District for the Disaster Management Center, Indika Ranavira, said that under this program, the drainage system will be expanded from Bogambara to Madala. 31 million rupees will be spent under the grounds of the Disaster Management Center. And that came to you in the segment of development.
Moving on with sports news.
In sports news, the 35th match of the World Championship Cricket Tournament has been obstructed by rain. Pakistan and New Zealand teams are competing. Batting first, New Zealand scored 401 runs for the loss of 6 wickets at the end of the 50 overs. Pakistan has scored 160 runs for the loss of 1 wicket at the end of the 21st over a short while ago. That is the sports news. Business news coming up.
Go ekak thiyana youth ekat life eke change ekat niyamata set wenna as wahagena dakapu hina habe karanna youth ekat niyamata set wenna friendship එක menna.
The all new NSB Ithru account, NSB I Am, a plan for your dream.
Business news sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
Galloya Plantations Private Limited will invest in constructing a bio-unit to produce more effective biofertilizer and reduce the use of chemical fertilizers. Executive Director of the Galloya Plantations Company, Danesh Aberatna, said that the company presently boasts of one of the largest organic fertilizer yards in Sri Lanka, capable of producing over 7,000 metric tons per year. That is the business news. Economic news follows.
Business news sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
Go ekak thiyana youth ekat life eke change ekat niyamata set wenna as wahagena dakapu hina habe karanna friendship එක මෙන්න.
The all-new NSB Ithru Mithru account. NSB IM, a plan for your dream.
In economic news, one of the world's biggest shipping firms is to cut 3,500 more jobs due to low freight rates and demands. AP Moller Maersk already cut 6,500 roles earlier this year as a part of rigorous cost containment measures, but said more redundancies were needed. The firm, which transports goods for major retailers such as Nike, said profits had plunged by 92% in its most recent quarterly results. That was economic news and the weather report to conclude.
Weather report.
And finally, the weather report Met Department says that showers or thunder showers over most parts of the island in this afternoon. The Met Department said heavy showers above 100 millimeters are likely in some places in the central, Sabaragamuwa and north central provinces and in the Mannar, Vavuniya and Mullaitivu districts. Fairly heavy showers above 50 millimeters are likely in some places elsewhere. Meanwhile, the general public has been requested to take adequate precautions to minimize damages caused by temporary localized strong winds and lightning during thunder showers. And before we conclude this bulletin, let's get back to the headlines once again. President Ranil Wickremesinghe has emphasized that the officials should implement the advice given to them for the country's development properly. The World Rugby Council lifts the ban imposed on Sri Lanka rugby. Several medium and large-sized tanks in the Anuradhapura district are overflowing due to the prevailing heavy rains. It has been noted that Sri Lanka has achieved a remarkable growth in covering its loan amidst the challenges. The two government fertilizer companies have agreed to provide fertilizer needed for the tea cultivation. In news overseas, US says up to 400,000 remain in North Gaza as ground offensive goes on. And with that, we conclude this bulletin of news. And now it's back to your regular Saturday evening host, my good friend Shandima, to continue with the entertainment.